Previously on It's Me, Reese. Necessities that you have to have as a man to attract a woman for a romantic partnership, according to Scott Galloway, are signaling resources, intellect/personality, and kindness. Before we get into the romantic aspect, because there is many things to talk about in that arena, is are you a good friend? What do you bring to the table in a friendship personality-wise? And jotting that down. Do not give advice that I do not follow my own. So I went ahead and made a list of my own personality traits / information about myself that gives someone more context into just who I am. I really need people to kind of sit and think on that one. Because,
hi there, I just realized how long this video had gotten, and it was going to go on a whole other topic that would have put this video at way past an hour. So for those who have stayed here for this long, I very much appreciate that you have.
my apologies to those I left on the edge of their seat by not going through with discussing the final topic I have thoughts on. The 3 necessities every man needs to attract women, and the intellect and / personality part of those 3 necessities. But it turns out it was a good thing that I stopped forcing you to hear me yap, because I ended up thinking a little more about it and wanted to add on to it. So if you are returning to get that final conclusion I know you've been anxiously waiting for, thank you for coming back. If you are new to hearing me yap, welcome. I'm sorry for how much I talk. I will most likely be in more than 2 outfits, as those diagnosed with ADHD, or one of the subcategories of ADHD, will know. Things pop into your head all the time that you'll want to add on to, and it happens at random. So let's get going into that last topic.
I feel like most opinions will come from lived real-world experience. Second thing is studies. When you're not sure, you look at studies.
Thank you so much, Pearl, for reminding me I needed to address something about citing statistics, a mistake I made. I used a stat in the first video, but did not cite the source. And I do not want to be that person who does that, because it drives me bonkers. People that use a stat that is either 1, inaccurate or misleading, or 2, that is very old. Like, if you're gonna use a old statistic, you should have a newer one to match, so it shows this is consistent over decades, or a decade, something like that. But I know stats are important to you too, Pearl, so again, thank you for reminding me.
I'm going to read this. This is from CBS News, all right? Does the sight of men doing traditional female chores turn women off? A new study suggests that the more time men spend on household tasks, the less sex they have.
Pearl, that doesn't sound right. That does not sound right at all.
Our findings suggest the importance of socialized gender roles for sexual frequencies in heterosexual marriage. Lead author Sarbino Corch, junior researcher at the Center for Advanced Studies at the Juan March Institute in Madrid, said in a press release, couples in which men participate in more household work typically done by women report having sex less frequently. Similarly, couples in which men participate more in traditionally masculine tasks, such as yard work, paying bills, and auto maintenance, report higher sexual frequency. This study was published in the February edition of the American Sociological Review. Surveyed 4,500 heterosexual married couples from 1992 to 1994. The average age for the men was 46 and the women 44.
Really? From 1992 to 1994? You weren't even alive when that study came out, if my memory serves me right. Shame on you for misleading young men who watch you. Now, I know this was a couple of years ago. This was before you were demonetized. Congrats on being monetized again. So I hope that the next time I see your face pop up on my feed, it is not for anything ridiculous, and you've learned to be more of a girl's girl while fighting for men and, the manosphere you have been so vocal in.
What is a mid? Let's talk about this. What is a mid? A mid is, I would say, a 4 to a 6, maybe a 7, maybe a 3 to a 7. That's all in the middle. So the problem is when a man has an opinion and it makes women feel icky, like this, because, many women will see this and think, oh shit, if Scarlett Johansson is a mid, what does that make me?
Damn it, Pearl! I wish you luck, Pearl. Now, back to what I was saying. The moment you have been waiting for. My final topic in the personality section of the 3 necessities that men need to attract women, according to Scott Galloway. And it is politics.
I would argue that young men are not going to the Republican Party. They're actually less conservative, or people have this image of young men that their knuckles are dragging along the ground. They actually are almost as in favor of gender rights as young women. What I would argue is that they're leaving the Democratic Party, because if you go to the DNC, the Democratic Party's website, there's a section that says who we serve. Click on it. And it says, these are the constituents in America that we serve, that we advocate for. And it lists 16 demographic groups, ranging from Asians and Pacific Islanders, the disabled, seniors, Black Americans, veterans. It goes through all of these groups. And I tried to add it up, and I think it adds up to 76% of the US population. But similar to kind of the DEI apparatus on campus now, or on university campuses, when you're purposely advocating and trying to advantage 76% of the population, you're not advantaging 76% of the population or advocating for them. You're discriminating against the 24%. And that 24% are squarely one group. It's young men. And if you look at the Democratic National Convention, it was a parade of demographic groups, but not one mentioned the group that has fallen furthest, fastest in the United States, and that's young men. Families and young men feel this. 3 times as likely to kill themselves, 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. Women under the age of 30 are now making more money than men. More single women own homes than single men. And by the way, we should never do anything to get in the way of that. That's a remarkable victory for us. But a lot of young men and their families feel that these young men are really struggling, and they are not seen by the Democratic Party. Because the Democratic Party, I would argue that our big failure over the last 20 years is that we've become sort of these self-appointed cops of social justice, and have tried to lecture the nation on what is the right social policy or behaviors, and that America has pretty squarely rejected this.
Now, I understand why younger men, especially younger white men, would leave the Democratic Party. Everything Scott Galloway just said is very spot on, and it's very unfortunate. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to launch this channel, is to be able to share an opinion and my personal thoughts regarding younger men and wanting to do what I can, because not all men are evil. I would say a majority of men are not evil. But there is this very hateful rhetoric around men. And when you are constantly being told you are evil, you are trash, I wouldn't expect those type of men who are being told how evil they are, and that the sins of the father now fall into the son. Like, that's That's not okay by me. So I wanted to almost extend an olive branch to the younger men, saying not all women think like this, because it truly does feel, especially online, that a lot of women do. So I just want to be someone that can give my thoughts and opinions. There's a lot of things that I think has gone wrong and has gone overboard with the quote-unquote feminist, the all men are trash rhetoric, and I just want to be someone that a younger man or any man can say, like, okay, not all white women hate me. Please know I come here with good intentions, and I will never, ever try and sell you a course when it comes to anything I am talking about, because that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because there is such a huge divide in where we are at today. With that said, though, I am concerned with kind of how politics has really shifted the dating game.
In terms of men, what you've seen is young men are going more conservative, young women are going slightly more progressive. And that has a lot of unfortunate ramifications because, again, it's another reason why young people are not getting together and mating. It's yet another reason not to date somebody. When I was your age, I was thinking about this when I was dating. For the life of me, if I went through every person I've dated in my 20s and 30s, I don't remember what their political affiliation was. I didn't care. We didn't talk about that. It was like, are you fun? I'm fun. Are you attracted to me? I'm not, like, let's go out, let's drink, let's see where this goes. We didn't talk about politics. So it's a shame because now politics is now kind of a gender divide.
Politics now are incredibly intertwined with who you are as a person, unfortunately. It is because we now have a heavy sect on identity politics and two very, very different Democrats and Republicans than we had even 10 years ago. Each stand for something different, and a lot of people, and especially a lot of women, are not going to date men who voted for Trump.
But not dating somebody just because they support Donald Trump is not a good reason not to date them.
It's not about Trump. Trump is the symptom. I know that many Republicans are not racist or xenophobic or promote genocide or want the Constitution violated. Even a lot of MAGA people don't. But I also know that for those who supported Trump, it wasn't a deal breaker. The racism wasn't a deal breaker. Violating the Constitution, not a deal breaker. Violating human rights, not a deal breaker. The xenophobia, persecuting the LGBTQ community, not wanting women to have rights to their own bodies. None of those things were deal breakers. Neither was the fact that he breaks the moral code they claim they follow. Serial adultery, bribery, paying hush money. We know reasonably that he did things with minors. Those are all things adamantly condemned in the Bible, but they still follow him. So what it is that in 2 Corinthians 6, Paul talks about married people being unequally yoked. And the way that was taught to me as a Christian nationalist was, well, you can't date or marry someone who's not a Christian because you'll be unequally yoked. And around the time of elections, they would say, and doesn't vote for Christian values, which means vote Republican, you'll be unequally yoked. But it's so much deeper than that. Unequally yoked is not about what you say you believe. It's how you live what you believe. It's core values. Because I have nothing in common in core value with someone who supports Trump. I could date and marry an atheist who lives what Jesus taught and be equally yoked. What are those values? Caring for the poor, defending those who can't defend themselves, giving to the needy, welcoming the sick, welcoming the stranger, loving your neighbor. Those are Christian values. That is what makes me equally yoked to someone, because my core values match theirs.
Recently in a video, I said I would not date a Trump supporter, and the Trump supporters got mad. Why do you guys want to date me anyway? You guys can't seem to grasp why I wouldn't want to date a Trump supporter, so I went ahead and wrote a list. Why it wouldn't work out between me and a Trump supporter? Number one, I value equality in relationships. I could never imagine being with someone who views women as inferior or as property. We would fight a lot about this. Number two, I could never date a man who voted for the man who said, grab him by the, said, your body, my choice to me, or for some unknown reason thought that they had the voice of reason when it came to abortion. Not only would it not work out, I would probably kick his This one's controversial, I guess. Well, I guess all of them are. I believe we need stricter gun laws. I don't want to be worried that our future kids will get 86'd while they're just trying to learn 2 + 2. This would cause a lot of fights between us, and it would never work out. Reason number 5, Donald Trump was found liable for sexual I could never date anyone who could overlook this and vote for him just because they thought Trump would lower the price of X, which, by the way, he has gone back and said he cannot do. I believe in equality and respect for all, regardless of race, gender, or class. Everyone deserves equal rights.
Somebody, just because they support Donald Trump, is not a good reason not to date them.
This is such a dangerous, disingenuous, bad take that I want to respond to it, and I want to do so in a way that has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Forget politicians, right? If your partner supports or believes in something that makes you feel deeply uncomfortable, right, that really rocks you to your core, that's a valid reason to leave. And his justification for why you should stay with somebody that makes you feel this way, which I'll show you in just a second, is arguably the most toxic aspect of this point.
And if you're the type of person that's going to end something with somebody just because they support the candidate that the other half of the country is supporting, what you're essentially saying that your values are is that you are really ideologically rigid, you're incredibly self-righteous in your morals, and you cannot accept influence from somebody who's different from you.
Having rigidity about certain core principles does not make one ideologically rigid as a whole, and it's absolutely ridiculous to argue otherwise. Just to give an extreme example, I consider myself to be staunchly anti-racist, right? It is not a character flaw, nor does it make me ideologically rigid as a whole, because I would refuse to date someone who's a Klans member.
I think that people who are like that don't actually want a partner. What they want is a fantasy. What they want is someone who's going to validate every feeling and belief that they have.
And that's a huge leap to take based on what you said, because people are allowed to have deal breakers. My wife and I disagree about things all the time. I like chunky peanut butter. She doesn't. She likes pineapple on pizza, right? She's an extrovert. I'm an introvert. There's a give and take that can happen with these sorts of disagreements that we have. But some of our core beliefs, and this isn't a shocking statement, right, are reflected in the candidates that we choose to vote for. We both are happier dating someone who's pro-choice, right, who believes in science, who supports education, who supports marriage equality, who's anti-racist. And so if someone says something like they won't date someone who votes for candidate X, it has nothing to do with the politician, right? It has nothing to do with them wanting someone who agrees with them on everything. It has to do with them wanting someone who agrees with them on the most basic aspects of how they view the world. And that's not unreasonable.
It is what it is. Sorry to tell you, because of more women becoming liberal or staying liberal at least, and more men pivoting away and becoming conservative, there are men who are intentionally lying and being deceitful because they don't want to face the actions or the consequences of their actions.
You went undercover
for the year, yeah.
For the year.
Throughout the whole presidential race.
You went undercover in dating.
Yes.
I want to pop in right here just to say I will be going through and doing a full video on the 2 parts of this interview with Vera the journalist. I think it's very important, especially when listening to a matchmaker, to talk about what works for everyone, what doesn't work, and there are a few things she says that really just gave me a bad vibe. So I think it's important. Anyone who is interested in a matchmaker or listens to anyone for dating advice know exactly their vibes and how they approach situations that are going to be different for everyone else.
I need you to give us the details. Set us up here. Where are we going undercover?
So it's the year 2024, and there's a presidential election in November, and February, March is when I started looking. I was getting targeted by conservative dating apps on social media, and I started looking into them as a way to maybe just connect with people that aren't really in my social circles. Because I found this one app, and I started going through the profiles, and it's for people who are aligned in their conservatism. I started looking at the profiles, and very quickly I found very far right presenting people.
In what way?
I mean, they would literally in their dating profile write far right conspiracy theorist.
Oh.
And they would write that they were looking for a traditional submissive wife. Like they were very up.
Were all of the men that you were dating through this app New York City based?
They were all New York City based. And I also
I thought it would be national or something. I didn't realize that we had.
I focused on New York City, especially because I found it so interesting that we're such a liberal city. And
Did you ever go on any dates?
Yes. So I matched with 60 guys total. I went on 26 dates over the course of the presidential race. And there were 14 men total that I met in person. But these guys live in New York City. They present as liberal because they don't want to lose their liberal friends. And then they go online and they're a neo-Nazi online, or like they're a white supremacist online. But in real life, they're trying to blend in because they still care about having friends. And
do not be this person that she's talking about. If you made the choice to, one, vote for our current president, and two, are in these forums or these groups and whatnot, the way to be a man, in my opinion, is to stand up and stand for what you believe in. And that includes your opinions and thoughts that aren't going to be popular and are going to most likely either corrupt or end relationships, specifically friendships. But that is one, what being a mature adult is knowing the choices you make have consequences. And number two, accepting that. If you are someone who is lying to the people closest to you, well, you can't even say they're the closest to you because they really don't know the real you. So you're just being a fake punk. That's really all that is. You're being deceitful and dishonest, and that does not make you a good friend or a good person. And I have said in my other videos, and I will say it again, and you will most likely hear it a million times over if you continue watching this channel. You need to be a good friend before you can be a good romantic partner. And a good friend does not lie.
they care about not
social
being
status too.
Not even maybe social status, but I really think it's more about not feeling ostracized, like because they genuinely feel isolated and left out, like they're what they believe and what they feel about themselves. They feel like they are not, they feel left out.
I know it sucks having certain beliefs that will end friendships and relationships you've cultivated and had for years. But I know personally, if someone lied to me like that, I'd be disgusted. And I'm a pretty open person, and I always try and find ways to understand opinions that are different than my own. But I will not tolerate someone who is lying to me or being hateful towards me in other people who are just simply existing. If you're someone who is going and doing what things like this reporter is talking about, or I'm sorry, reporter, journalist, same thing, then you do not need to be dating, because you're clearly not a good friend if you're just lying. And why not, if there are people in these circles that you share the same ideologies with, go spend time with them. It sounds like it's not uncommon. There are people in the red pill, the manosphere, in Trump lovers everywhere. So go create a community with those people, and that will be the first step to being a good person and standing on business and standing on your beliefs is what will get you closer to finding a romantic partner. There is no reason to lie about your political beliefs. There are so many eligible, hot women who voted for Trump. One less thing to argue about. You don't have to hide things. Because look right here.
I just made the rolling plane like a landing strip. I'm a 2020 president candidate.
And right here.
How's a small town business owner supposed to win?
And here.
Black Republican is out right now. Black Republican is out right now.
And here. Comments seem to be off for a lot of these videos. Interesting. And here.
Baby.
Wait. I think she may actually be a liberal. My bad, guys.
I was capping. I was lying.
Nope. I guess that was satire or a lie. No, she's for sure a Republican.
But I got better since you got gone.
Does anybody remember when the liberals were losing their minds, going crazy, whenever Elon bought Twitter for $44 billion and they were going on these outrages and all these media outlets were going on tangents? He could have saved world hunger with $44 billion. Right? But then we turn around and it's 2024 and they say, here's my money, have my money. We're going to fund a war that we're not even in. We're going to give you $180+ billion to fund this war in Ukraine. LOL. Like, what about world hunger? Does that not?
Those two are not the same thing, as one person hoarding wealth and the other government money. So there's that. But I think she's single. Lucky for you guys. I could go on forever because there's so many different TikToks.
Look, so many hot MAGA women. Ooh, go for them. Leave the liberal women alone.
Just go after the hot, straight, conservative woman. Take this movie review for a 1980s horror movie called The Stepfather. This man clearly would not be good with dating a liberal woman if what he took away from a movie made in the 1980s about a serial killer who kills off his family over and over because he kills a family, then puts himself into a new family of a woman who is widowed or divorced with her kids so he can complete that family. And then when they're not perfect, he kills them and repeats the cycle. If you believe, and I quote, the message in this movie, and I'm not exaggerating, folks, is that someone who espouses old-fashioned family values is nuts. In this case, a thoroughly demented serial killer.
Morrison isn't his real name.
What is it?
God knows, we don't. His personal history was falsified and his prints were untraceable. It was possible Morrison had done it before.
they don't need to be dating at all, in my opinion, if that's what you took away from this film. Yeah, so don't be like this guy either, because it's not normal to see this movie and think it's a war on the nuclear family and traditional values. That's not what this is about at all. If you are someone who identifies as conservative, don't do this lying BS. Because not only is it not cool to lie, but that gives like serial killer Second Life vibes if you're having to hide your MAGA tendencies from the world. Especially the people close to you. It's given Ted Bundy a little bit. I'm sorry. It is. Don't be like Ted Bundy. You don't want your last meal to be on death row.